Hi, everyone. Thank you for staying for our panel. As Amanda said, I'm Kim Iadevaia. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Influential, which is an influencer marketing company, for those who don't know. We're here with Erin and Heather today, who we've been working with at Influential for quite a few years now, really honing in on their influencer strategy and across brands. So I'll let Erin and Heather introduce themselves, give you a little bit more of their background before we get started.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Erin Feeley, and I'm the Consumer Engagement Director at Reckitt, and that means media and that means e-commerce. So we're working across the full funnel. I got a fancy new name when we took that path, and I'm really excited to be here. I've been at Reckitt for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was on the agency side, primarily in the luxury goods sector. So it is a nice pivot to packaged goods. Speaking about needs versus wants sometimes. So that's me.
And I'm Heather Sparks. I am the head of content at Zenith, and I am lucky to work with clients like Erin. And my role is primarily to lead our branded content and influencer practice and help brands compete outside of traditional media places and spaces.
Awesome. So to kick us off, Heather, I'm going to throw this one to you. So every area of marketing feels like it's in a constant state of change, really, especially social. Every day, something new platforms, new creators, new formats, new opportunities for brands. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you're navigating that constant change for your clients and really helping them develop a strategic, platform for influencers and creators?
Guess we're starting right off with the hardball questions, aren't we, Kim? So what I think is really interesting is influencer marketing in particular has sort of reached an inflection point. And what I like to say is, it's a real grown-up media type now, right? It has a seat at the table. And it goes through change and dynamics, just like every other media type that we plan for our client partners does. So when we think about helping our clients navigate through the state of change, it's no different from my perspective in terms of different measurement opportunities for video, fragmentation of consumer behaviors, new data and ad tech solutions. I think that influencer is no different, and it's a real grown-up media type, and I will stand by that.
I agree. For sure. It definitely, we've been having a lot of conversations, especially over the last couple of years, in terms of how do you develop it as a channel. So certainly working with the folks at Publicis and Heather's team and Erin, we've been able to hone into that. So really, Erin, as the Consumer Engagement Director at Reckitt, how do you really meet the needs of your brands, making sure that they're getting what they want, delivering on that, while meeting your consumers' needs and finding them where they're actually consuming content?
Sure. So we sell low involvement, low price, everyday items, dish pods, cleaning wipes. So within the context of a very inflationary marketplace where private label is sort of nipping at our heels, relevance is sort of the topic du jour, right? And I think when we look at our equity tracking over the past few years, what we see is driving relevance is going to deliver in terms of that promise of a brand versus a product. And we've tapped into creators, we've tapped into branded content and that shared equity as a propellant for driving that relevance. And I think it's offered a great opportunity for us to not just drive our own equity and why we exist in the world, but really try to expand that promise to be inclusive and to offer up the equity of the creators and sort of that shared promise that we offer to consumers.
Yeah, and just to build on that, Heather, I think as you work across multiple different clients, are you seeing similar strategies, talking to them about similar ways of making sure that you're showing up in a real relevant way, but certainly from an authentic perspective as well?
I think what's interesting is every brand and every vertical is sort of at a different point in the journey, right? And I think Erin and her team are sort of early adopters in terms of how it can apply to their business. And that's a lot of the success that they've seen in that space. But when you think about overall influencer and how you're thinking about it, I think the most interesting thing to me is that what we're really trying to do is create share of heart. And share of heart eventually will help to drive share of cart. And it's exactly what Erin talked about, right? It's what are the things that we just can't explain in a commercial ad? Where do we need extra time? Where do we need a different use case? Where is there a barrier to purchase that we can actually just be more direct about in areas like social that can help us break through some of the places that traditional ad places and spaces just aren't going to do for us? So I think one of the things that we do when we have a client partner come and say, hey, I'm really interested in accelerating my influencer work, the first question you'll always get from me is why? Why? What are we trying to do? Because sometimes part of a good influencer strategy is knowing when it's not the right choice for you, just as much as when it is.
I think you're definitely gonna get quoted on that. Share of heart equals share of cart. I'm gonna steal that. I am definitely
Here all
stealing
day,
that,
guys.
Heather. That's a good one. I haven't heard you say that before. So we at Influential, we work across brands. Obviously, we work really closely with Erin and team on the Reckitt portfolio. But authenticity is really key. You obviously hear that anytime that you're speaking to somebody who works in the creator space. But I think the way that your teams have really embraced the authenticity, and especially from a brand that you maybe wouldn't expect. Oh, how do I really find love for Finish, right? How do I use creators to really...
I love Finish. I'm just going to put that out there.
Everyone loves cleaning their dishes.
Yes, to drive home, what Lysol can do as a brand and a product, but also really integrate into a consumer's feeds and their lives. How are you working with creators from an authenticity perspective? Are there barriers that you and your team have come up against, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think we look at it from a few different vectors. First and foremost, Influential has done a great job coaching us to authenticity. We have what we call a diversity collective, whereby we have a board of creators that we can co-collaborate with, we can ask questions of, and what we hear from them time and time again is, please let me be me. I know what's best for my audience, I know what's best for my followers, and I value you when I know that you're valuing me and that relationship. So I think authenticity of the creator and their voice is something that we've leapt into. We've tried to build that muscle over the years, and certainly our partners have done a great job coaching us to that. But then there are other vectors of authenticity that are as important to us. Authenticity of the platform. How are we showing up on a platform like TikTok versus a platform like YouTube? And how are we ensuring that the content, whether with a creator or really our base social assets, are fit for the need of that consumer on that platform? So I think authenticity of the platform is critical as well. And then authenticity of the brand. That's sort of the easiest part in theory because we are brand people. But actually, when faced with creators that bring their own ideas, it is interesting to see how important it is to articulate your brand essence and your mission in that campaign. And when you're working with a staff of marketers, coaching them to that articulation and not just what it means from a product perspective, but what it means for the consumer. And again, what our promise is to consumers is a great coaching moment. So we really try to work from those three vectors. We don't always get it right. I think that's the biggest thing. And at the beginning, probably we got it wrong more than we got it right, but I think we've made some terrific strides in terms of finding that authentic voice. Mm-hmm. And once we find it, not being scared of it and really leaning into it, and then having a little bit of evidence to have confidence to do it again.
Yeah, I think what you just said in terms of not being afraid of getting it wrong and then, figuring out how to get it right the next time. Having invested in the influencer marketing space so that you have that ability, right? So it's not just one campaign and it's done. You've really embraced it across the portfolio of brands that we work together on. So I think that's a really big piece of it. How do you know when you get it right? How do you fix it when you get it wrong? And giving yourselves enough latitude to do that.
And I think just to add to that, when you have a commitment over a period of time, years now for us, you do start working with some creators consistently. Mm-hmm. And the beauty there is the co-collaboration. Right? And the buildup of trust, much similar to an agency relationship where there's a lot of trust. So I think those journeys are fascinating. When an idea comes that because of the 2-year equity we built with each other, we say yes, whereas maybe at the initial start of a relationship, we may have said no.
And I think what's interesting is there's there's sort of two factors that I think play into what Erin shared that I see really across verticals. I think the first is that as marketers, we're so conditioned to follow these rules, right? We need to have 3 RTBs, our logo needs to be there within 3 seconds, and this is the magic quota of exactly what we spend and where. And unfortunately, with influencer, it's a little more art than science. And so to Erin's point, we need partners that are willing to test and learn and create sprints and help us get to a scientific art that can unlock that value. I think the second thing is that you actually have to be really comfortable with who you are as a brand to turn that creative narrative over to a creator. And I think to Erin's point, that's actually where we've gotten to eventually, right? Is we've built that trust with these specific creators that we've gotten to a place where we go, you know what? I feel good about kind of letting you do a little bit of your thing, and then let me come in and give you some ways that we can help portray the brand.
So, Erin, you mentioned the diversity collective that we've worked on together with Heather's team and Influential. Can you both just talk a little bit about what that journey's been like, how the creators that we've embraced and pulled into that diversity collective, and what that really has meant from a brand perspective?
Sure, I'll kick off from a brand perspective. I think it's opened our eyes, right? Ultimately, our consumer is diverse. We need to be inclusive of that consumer. 40 years old and under is majority minority at this point. So how we show up in the marketplace is critical to sort of everyone. And I think the collective has offered us insight into the uniqueness and the way that creators like to bring their identity to their audience, which can be unique, both based on what that identity is, but based on how the creator is showing up, what life stage they're in, but also a lot of the similarities, right? At the end of the day, they are looking to be authentic, as we said, and they're looking to have a red thread throughout their entire story, right? And so I think the value of that has been wonderful, certainly opening the eyes of all of our marketers to the opportunities for us to represent ourselves within the marketplace. And I think the idea of being in culture, right? Yeah. We want to partner, we want to influence based on affinities, based on shared likeness. And attributes, and I think that's a real opportunity with the Diversity Collective. Yeah.
And I think the big thing that I've loved about it is there's certain realities of influencer marketing that are always going to be there, right? We've got a new product launch, it's launching at X date, we've got to get the creative out by that date, or legal's got feedback that has to be incorporated. Those realities are always going to exist. I think the Diversity Collective allows us to talk to the humans behind every step of the process. And so we're preventing it from becoming a transaction at scale into becoming a relationship at scale. And I think that's been the most powerful thing, even in terms of the types of feedback that we get on campaigns. Yeah. We've met with these folks. We understand what makes them tick. They've shared with us their perspective on our products. And again, to Erin's point, that just fosters such a level of trust, and you see it in the outcomes.
I think really what we've done together in terms of spending time with the creators and really listening to them, whether it's hosting a roundtable dinner, which we're doing next week together, and really educating ourselves, the teams, understanding like how do they want to show up in their how do they want your brands to show up in their feed? How should they show up in that feed? So I think that's been really valuable for all of us, especially us at Influential as we develop new creator opportunities every day for brands.
Yeah, and I would say the word representation probably takes on a few different connotations in this instance, in that their representation and how they show up to their audiences is as critical as our representation. And so how we come to them, right, and how we bring our products and our opportunity to them is really shared. And so it's a great partnership.
Now we'll get into the weeds a little bit in terms of how do you measure, right? How do you measure the impact of creators? You've got now the right creators, you've got the right content, you've got it on the right platforms, reaching the right audience, but how do you actually prove that out?
Sure, and I think it was at the forefront of our journey. Several years ago, we came to Heather and we said, there's an opportunity for us to be reaching more consumers in a more meaningful way. We think that this could be a good vertical to lean into, and we tested it, right? So we went into the marketplace and we built sort of like your tried and true match market to understand the impact, the incremental impact when we have creator voices speaking on our behalf. And what we saw was a 20% lift, right? Now, this was several years ago, but it gave us that confidence to say, okay, now how do we take this and expand it across all of our big bets, across all of our priority businesses, because we know that the power is there and the opportunity is there. And since that time, we continue to measure. We continue to understand both from a soft, more equity perspective through to the sales impact, the value of our different creators, the value of our different campaigns. And not all campaigns are the same, not one size fits all. So there's also then going into the nuance of what type of campaign works best for a product that is launching versus what type of campaign with what group of creators works best for a piece of base business where we're trying to build to an inflection point during the year.
And I think going back to the testing and the learning piece in the prior questions, you've really taken that to heart when it comes to seeing what the results could be from a creator standpoint. So I know we've done some work with Airwick and tested TikTok shops, and that was definitely a new space in place for a brand like Airwick to really show up. And a lot of folks said, like, how are you going to do this with Airwick? Why are you doing this with Airwick? But I think from a test and learn perspective, it was really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we, again, are mass products. We are very good at shipping pallets to mass retailers and the consumer purchasing at that point of sale. So how we create a go-to-market that can allow the consumer to purchase a specific product or sort of an each is difficult for us. I think we collectively took on the role of merchant with our TikTok shop.
We learned things.
Yes. Our sales organization was a little bit like, you marketers go and test this and come to us when it becomes a thing. So I'm proud of a few different elements with that. One is operationally, we worked in very different ways. We solved problems. And again, we built muscles as digital marketers. But two, we understand the value of the shelf. And really at Reckitt, we're trying to intercept every shelf. Yeah. Right? And the interesting ways that we do that are going to be with test and learn. It's going to be trying different things, feeling uncomfortable. And with the TikTok shop, I think we learned two things that were fascinating. One, the power of TikTok as a selling platform. And two, the role that it can play specifically with different types of products. We saw that there was specific comms put in place and really trying to sell to a specific piece of our Airwick portfolio, when in fact the sales were behind another element. Right? So we took action to say, okay, this becomes a wonderful seeding opportunity for Airwick. You have your fragrances, and then you have the gadgets that make the fragrances come out. So seeding those gadgets became a wonderful opportunity. It also opened up a wonderful door to the role that TikTok can play in our lower funnel in total. Right? So during the likes of a Prime Day, we're in Prime Big Deals Day right now, actually, tracking hour by hour. So the role that TikTok can play in really demand creation and not just broad-based awareness becomes fascinating.
I think the thing that was also really interesting about that particular test is we went into it with really level set expectations. I don't think anybody was thinking this is going to be a pure performance play and we are going to blow the lid off sales, right? Our priority KPI was still very much awareness and consideration. And then sales was a lagging measurable indicator that gave us another set of learnings. And so I think the other thing that's really interesting is how do you consider double duty for these types of things? And how do you make it easy for someone that wants to convert in that moment to do so, but also provide some really great brand and product information for somebody that chooses to convert in a big box?
And I think it also gave us insight into which creators should we use when we're really looking to move the needle from a sales perspective versus maybe a broader awareness brand story. So when we're working together, I think identifying those right creators for the right moments within that journey in terms of from a brand is really important as well.
Yeah, there were so many wonderful learnings from that. And what's interesting is we took it to our e-commerce sales organization saying, hey, we did a thing. We're super interested in it. We'd love for you to kind of pick up the merchant side of it now. And initially they said, no, that's not the way we do things. But since that time, a few months ago, they've come back around. And we're going to open it, and we're going to sort of take it on as a proper class of trade almost. And it comes from a test, a hypothesis to say what happens when we intercept the consumer in their preferred point of search and their point of intent, that being TikTok.
Yeah, I think the ability to open up new revenue streams that maybe weren't as obvious through creators is super powerful. So, as we start to wrap up, do you want to both kind of share your parting thoughts on where you see, Erin, your brands going from a creator perspective, and Heather certainly just from a broader agency perspective, where you think brands can lean in and find the right value using creators?
Sure, I'll start. I think we have a lot of blue sky. I think that the fundamentals of marketing are being put to test with practices like creator practices, right? This is going to be a core requirement of a brand manager in the future to know how to write a brief that actions a creator campaign. That becomes really difficult, right? And there's a lot of work there that we do. So I think that it's fundamental to our go-to-market model. We're a few years behind D2Cs, I think, if we're being honest, but that's okay. It's the model that we're in as CPG. And so we work really hard every day to coach and to educate ourselves to do this well. And that's my thought on it. It's hard work, but it's a muscle well worth building.
Agree. And I think, in summary, I think we'll find that influencer as a practice and creator as a practice is going to continue to get much closer to multicultural as a practice and commerce as a practice, and even to some degree, business as usual, social and performance. So even just thinking structurally at our agency, we've actually reorganized to enable that. Coming out of some of the things that we've learned today, which is, creators are a reflection of today's majority. They are culture first. They will continue to be culture first. And people want to shop when the moment strikes them. And we have to think about how we are connecting through culture and driving through to purchase. So siloed thinking about this type of practice, I think, is going to become less and less the case moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing your perspective. And we're looking forward to more campaigns working together.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks,
everyone.